I would get myself a 1,000 square foot office with maybe 2 to 3 chairs. I would charge more than anybody in my community. I would do aligners with as much technology. I'd use OrthoFi, I'd use remote response, I'd use dental monitoring, aligners, and I would make it, get yourself to a $3 million practice with a 40% overhead. And you say, but Glenn, I'm using all this technology. How do I keep it low? You charge fairly and you scale it. Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of your 5-Minute Friday. I'm your host, Dr. Glenn Krieger, and today I want to talk about overhead. I want you to get down to 40% overhead in your practice. Now, for some of you, that's very easy. For some of you, that's very difficult. What do you mean it's easy? Well, if you work in a rural area, let's just pick anywhere USA, right? There's a major city an hour and a half from you, and you're not in the suburbs. You're a little further outside the suburbs. Let's call it small town America. And you're still able to charge a very fair fee for your ortho, right? If the big city folks are charging $6,000, $6,500, $7,000 for a class 1 crowded case, you're not charging $2,900 or $3,900. You're charging a fair fee. And your labor costs are likely considerably lower than they are in the city. Your rent costs are probably considerably lower. And if you're wise in the way you adopt technology in your practice, I personally know orthodontists who are below 40%, and they're not working that hard. And I'm not talking about the antiquated, and I'm going to use that word, the antiquated, let's see 30 patients a day and have 2 assistants and do, if you want to do that, God bless you. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to do it, I see that as an antiquated process. Why? Because the fixed costs that you're going to face in most locales, are going to beat you up to where, unless you run a true boutique office, which I'm totally in favor of, if you're going to run that, $7,500, $8,000 per case fee and see 25, 30 patients a day, see, 10 new patients a month maximum, right? Something along those lines, good for you. If you're going to pull that off and have $1 million practice, at 50% overhead, and you think you can pull that off and charge 50% more than everybody else in your town, go for it. When I was a restorative dentist, I was arguably the most expensive in my neighborhood. It took me over a decade to get there. It took me thousands of hours of CE and exceptional attention to detail on customer service and the new patient experience to get there. And of course, I used the digital co-diagnosis to present, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 cases. And if you don't know what that is, you should go look at the Clinical Photography 1 Orthopreneurs University course that I have, where I go through all of that. It really is a very moral, honest way to go over treatment plans with your patients. But again, if you're going to be small, you better be profitable and you better be high priced, because you're not going to get there any other way. Now, let's just say you work in the city and you're charging what you want to charge. You can't run a small practice and get to 40% overhead in most cases in the city. Why? Because at the end of the day, the problem with that is the fixed costs. I've talked about this a huge amount of time. You need to watch your fixed costs carefully. People sign on the dotted line for leases for spaces way bigger than they need, way more than they need, way more expensive than they need. And again, if I was going to do it today, my fixed costs would be as low as I could get it. I wouldn't care so much about my variable costs because I would charge fairly for what I'm going to do. And I would do personally an aligner mostly practice with dental monitoring, or you could use another remote monitoring system if you wanted to. And I would use Remote Response, the company I started, to manage the dental monitoring dashboard. And I would do as few employees as I needed. That's fixed costs again. It's technically variable, but they really are more like fixed, because you use a number of assistants based upon the number of patients you have. So as the number of patients go up, it is a variable cost. But once you hire one, the number of patients you get that day or afternoon is going to affect your cost. So I would do it in a small practice. I would get myself a 1,000 square foot office with maybe 2 to 3 chairs. I would charge more than anybody in my community. I would do aligners with as much technology. I'd use OrthoFi, I'd use remote response, I'd use dental monitoring, aligners, and I would make it, get yourself to a $3 million practice with a 40% overhead. And you say, but Glenn, I'm using all this technology. How do I keep it low? You charge fairly and you scale it. And when you scale it properly, that meaning you have so much technology being utilized that you can actually reduce the number of team members considerably. You come out the other end really, really well. So again, this whole conversation is to say, if you want to get to 40%, that may be a bit ambitious. 45, you should be able to get there in most locales. And again, there's many, many places where, and reasons why you can't get there. And we're not going to get into those now. But I can't tell you how many doctors I know who have $4 to $5 million practices and have 40 to 50% overhead. And it's a great life and it's a great way to go. And they're working 3, maybe 4 days a week. And they're seeing their families and they're traveling a lot, taking a lot of time off, and you can do it too. If you have no clue how to get there and you're really, really clueless on this, then you definitely should be at next year's summit, Orthopreneurs Summit 2025 in Vegas. It's the first one where we have clinical in it with Tom Pitts, Ron Ronconi, Dan Bills, John Graham, Stu Frost, Maz Moshiri. I mean, I can go on and on and on with the most amazing names. So we're going to give you clinical and management tips. But we've got an afternoon sessions, and one of the sessions is called the $5 million practice. And I have people speaking in that who've been there, done that, are going to give you great tips. I've got another track called the 45% overhead practice. So that you want to learn how to get your overhead down, these are people who are going to do it. And the cost of the meeting is so inexpensive compared to what you're getting back out of it. So go to opsummit2025.com. You can, if you want it, you can have that $5 million practice at 45% overhead. You can have that, and without killing yourself is what I want to be crystal clear about. So again, if you don't know where to start, I just told you. Love you all. Hope you're well. Please reach out to me if you have any questions, and wishing you a great day.